So there are three main objectives for today's SPSA modification training. Number one, we want you to walk away with an understanding of how to create two different kinds of SPSA modifications. One with no budget changes and one with budget changes. Now, while this part of the presentation is primarily targeting our schools that will be creating the modification, it's still beneficial for our regional reviewers and support staff to understand the components of the modification platform and how it works in order to best support the schools with completing the modifications throughout the year. The second objective is for the schools and regional reviewers to understand how the SPSA modification process works from submission to final modification and budget adjustment approval. And then lastly, we are going to review with you some appendix resources that will be helpful to both our schools and regional reviewers in supporting this pilot modification process throughout the year. So the first thing we're going to go over is how to create a new modification. Once you log into the online SPSA and go to the dashboard, on the left navigation menu, you will find a CM0 data tab. On the CM0 data page, you will make sure that every budgeted item is assigned to a specific pillar and school strategy with actions. And this can be done by selecting the pillar and school strategy with actions from a drop-down menu in the last column labeled pillar/school strategy with actions. Once you've assigned all budgeted items to a pillar and a school strategy with actions, click the Save button and then click on Go to the Modification dashboard. Now you're ready to create a new modification. And first, we're going to go over how to create a modification that has no budget change. In other words, you might only be updating a strategy with actions. On the modification dashboard, you will click on Create New Modification. You will first select No Budget as the type of modification, then click the Save button. First, you will fill in the needs assessment box by explaining the data-driven need behind completing this modification. For example, perhaps your mid-year data shows that a large number of students are not making adequate progress on iReady assessments, and you determine that a new strategy for reteaching ELA or math is going to be necessary. So you would provide that information and the data in this text box. The next part of the modification is the measurable objective section. The modification may involve a revision to an existing measurable objective from your original SPSA, or the creation of a new measurable objective. Now, it is important to note for schools that you are not required to add or modify measurable objectives. A school can skip this section and go directly to the school strategy with actions section to add or modify existing strategies and actions. If a school, though, does need to modify or create new measurable objectives, the deadline for that is October 31st. Now, the process for modifying measurable objectives is the same for both implementation and improvement objectives. So we're just going to illustrate that process using implementation objectives right now. First, click on Modify Measurable Objectives button. And again, you would select whether it's an implementation or improvement objective, but we're just illustrating implementation today. Then you would select the measurable objectives that you want to modify and click on the Start Editing button. The item status column will display modified. And in the blank text box beneath the original objective, you will enter the modified objective. If you elected to modify your objective but left that field blank, it will trigger an error message when you save the modification as a draft or when you attempt to submit the modification. But just know that you can still save a modification as a draft, even if there is an error. Now, if instead of modifying an existing objective, you are trying to create a new objective, click on Add New and select whether it's a new implementation or improvement objective. Then you would select the pillar that you want to add the new objective to and click on the Select button. The item status column will display new to indicate that this is a new objective. And then you will type into the text box the new objective and save the modification as a draft. Now, if you decide that you no longer need to modify an existing objective that you selected or a new one that you created, you can delete the new or existing objective by clicking on the trash can. The platform will ask you to verify that you want to delete the objective. But just know that deleting the objective doesn't permanently delete it. If it's a modified one, it can be reselected again for modification. But if it's a new objective that you chose to create, by deleting it, it will disappear. You can't reselect it. But modified ones, if you delete them, they will remain in your original SPSA and you can always reselect those again. In this next section, we'll illustrate how to create new district priority, district strategies, school strategies, and school actions. To add a new one, click on the Add District Priority /Strategies and School Strategy /Action button. Then select the pillar page and click on the Select button. In the second column next to the pillar selection, you'll see the word New, indicating that this is a new set of priorities, strategies, and actions. First, you will type the applicable school strategy in the Modified School Strategy text box. Then you will type the applicable school actions in the Modified School Actions text box. And again, if any fields are left blank, it will trigger an error when you attempt to save or submit the modification. And it is important to note that the new strategy with actions will appear in sequential numbering. So in this example, the school already had 2 strategies with actions in its original SPSA plan. So this new modified strategy with actions will be number 3. Then the next one after that would be number 4, and so on. After modifying the school strategy and actions, you can add a new district priority and strategy to align with your school strategy, or you can remove an existing district priority and strategy from the ones you developed in your original SPSA by clicking on that Add Remove District Priority and Strategies button. Select the district priority and then click on the Apply button. In this example, we're illustrating selecting priority 1A, 1B, and 1C as our district priorities. Once you click on the Apply button, a pop-up of district strategies aligned to the district priorities you selected is going to appear. Select all the applicable district strategies and then click on the Start Editing button. In this example, we're illustrating selecting district strategies 1A S1, 1B S1, and 1C S1. Your modified district priorities and strategies are going to then display as you see here on this slide. Now, throughout this process, and you'll hear me say this several times during this presentation, we recommend you save frequently to avoid any data loss. I would recommend saving after you complete each section before moving on to the next section of the modification. Now we're going to illustrate how to modify existing district priorities, strategies, and school strategies and actions. So the section I just went over is how to create a new one. Now we'll talk about how to modify an existing one from your original SPSA plan. You'll first click on Modify District Priority Strategies and School Strategy and Action. Then you'll select the applicable school strategy with actions to be modified and click on Start Editing. Now, in our example here, we selected Academic Excellence, ELA, School Strategy with Actions 2, so it's going to be displayed as you see here. The status column will show modified to indicate that you're modifying an existing strategy and actions. And beneath the original school strategy with actions, which will be grayed out, you'll first type the applicable school strategy in the modified school strategy text box. Then you will type in the modified school actions in the modified school actions text box. Now, once again, any blank fields will trigger an error message when you attempt to save or submit the modification. After filling in the modified school strategy and school actions boxes, save the modification as the draft, again, to avoid any data loss. After completing that section, you can click on Add Remove District Priority and Strategy to align those to the school strategies and actions that you modified. Select the district priority or priorities and click the Apply button. You can select new priorities, but you can also reselect priorities that you had in the original plan as well. So in our example here, we illustrate selecting a new priority 1B and 1D, but also reselecting 1A again, which was already in our original plan. And all three of those will display in the modified district priority selections. Now, after clicking on the Apply button, you'll get the pop-up for the district strategies aligned to the priorities that you selected. Select all the applicable district strategies and then click on Start Editing. And in our example here, we selected 1A S1, 1B S2, and 1D S2. The modified district strategies are going to appear beneath the modified district priorities, as you see here. And both of those will appear beneath the original district priorities and strategies that were developed in your original SPSA. The way you can distinguish them apart is by the word modified. That lets you know which ones are part of your modification versus the ones that are part of your original SPSA. Next, we'll go over how to delete a district priority, strategies, and school strategy and actions. If you selected to either create a new entry or one that you want to modify, but let's say later you decided you no longer need the new or modified strategy, you can delete it by clicking on the trash can and then clicking OK to verify that you want to delete it. Again, we want to note that deleting an entry doesn't permanently delete it. If it's a modified strategy, it can be reselected again for modification. Okay. But an important note here is that if you delete the district priority and strategy entry, it will also delete the school strategy and actions that go with it, because all of those go together. So by deleting one part, you're deleting the other. Okay. Next, we'll go over the approval process for modifications that have no budget changes. Only the principal or assistant principal can enter the SSC approval date, the Ed Code certification, and the administrator e-signature, which are all required. A school Title I designee will not be able to complete those fields. Likewise, only the principal or AP can click the Submit Final Modification button to submit it to regional reviewers for approval. The regional reviewers will receive an email notification that the modification is ready for review. Now, if the school is not ready to submit the modification for review, it can click on Save Modification as a draft to continue working on it, because we know you might not always be able to finish it in one sitting, so you can save your progress and then come back to it later. Now, the Save button can be selected by either an administrator or a school Title I designee. Okay. Now, no budget change approvals are only required from the regional director and regional Title I coordinator. Fiscal approval is not required since there is no budget change involved. At the bottom of the modification, there is an approval section where the director and Title I coordinator will either mark the modification as approved or revision required. The name and date stamp will automatically populate once one of those two boxes is checked off and the reviewer clicks on the Save Modification Decision button. An email notification will be sent to the principal and school designee when a modification has been approved or a revision is required. Now, everything we've covered so far was for modifications with no budget change. Now we'll provide you with an overview of how to complete a modification with budget changes. One thing you will notice in this next section is many of the steps I went over for no budget change are exactly similar for a budget change. And that's intentional because the process is going to be the same with the exception of adding budget items. And we also wanted you to hear this information a second time in this part of the presentation so that you can start to internalize the information a little bit better when you see a lot of the same steps repeated a second time. So after clicking on Create New Modification, select, this time instead of selecting No Budget, if you're trying to make budget changes, select Budget as the modification type, then Save. Select the purpose of the modification and the program funding code, and then click on the Create button. So for example, the purpose might be new allocation or salary savings, and the program code or funding program might be 7S046. Now, it is important to note that for modifications that involve a budget change, only one program code can be selected per modification. The program must be posted by the fiscal specialist before another modification for that same program code can be created. In other words, if I submit a modification with budget changes for 7S046, I can't submit a second modification that also involves 7S046 budget change until the first one is fully approved. Now, on the other hand, if I have a modification with budget change for 7S046 that's still pending approval, but then I create a new modification for 7E046, that would be okay in that scenario because they're two different program codes. Now, if your modification, though, does not involve a budget change, you can submit multiple modifications for the same program, but for budget changes, only one modification at a time for the same program code. Now, the next step is to state what will be defunded if applicable. If nothing is being defunded, write NA. And then in the box beneath that, indicate what findings from your needs assessment led you to adopt this strategy. And again, here's where you're going to cite data that supports the need behind creating this modification and the strategies that you're either going to create or modify as part of this modification. Now, the modification purpose that you selected will appear at the top of the modification when you save the modification as a draft. Next, we'll review modifying measurable objectives. If you're modifying your objectives, click on the Modify button. And once again, we're going to illustrate this using implementation objectives. And once more, as a reminder, the deadline to modify your measurable objectives is October 31st. So the next step would be to select the pillar pages where you want to modify objectives and click on Start Editing. Type the modified objectives in the text box beneath the original objectives, and the status will display as modified. Your modified objectives will always display as a separate text box beneath the original objectives in each pillar. Now, if instead of modifying, you want to create a new measurable objective, click on the Add New button, and then select the pillar page and click on the Select button. The item status now will display New, and then you will type the measurable objective in the text box. If you decide that you no longer want to keep a new or modified objective, again, you can delete it by clicking on the trash can and verifying that you want to delete it. For your modified objectives, it will not be permanently deleted. It just deletes it from the modification that you're creating, and it can always be reselected again for modification. Now we'll go over the process for creating a new district priority strategies and school strategy and actions. So you would first click on the Add button. Then select the pillar page and then click on the Select button. The status is going to display as new. And then you'll type the applicable school strategy with actions in the modified school strategy text box, and then type the applicable school actions in the modified school actions text box. And once again, if you leave any fields blank, it will trigger an error message when you try to save or submit the modification. And I mentioned earlier, the strategy with actions will appear in sequential numbering. So in the example we're illustrating here, it's number 3, because we had 2 strategies with actions in the original SPSA. So the next one after that is 3, and the one after that would be 4, and so on. After completing the modified school strategy and school actions boxes, again, save your modification as a draft. Then you will click on the Add Remove District Priority and Strategies button to align those with your school strategy and actions. You'll select the applicable district priorities and then click on the Apply button. And in this particular example, we're illustrating selecting priorities 1A, 1B, and 1C. After clicking on the Apply button, you'll get a pop-up of district strategies aligned to those priorities that you selected. Select all the applicable strategies and then click on Start Editing. And in this example, we're illustrating selecting 1A S1, 1B S1, and 1C S1. The modified district priorities and strategies and school strategies and actions are going to display as you see here. It will always be the district priority on top, followed by the district strategies. And then beneath that will be the school strategy and then the school actions below that. And again, we're going to remind you several times today, save frequently throughout this process. Next, we'll go over how to modify district priority strategies and school strategies and actions. So once again, everything I covered before this was adding a new set of strategies and actions. Now we'll talk about modifying ones that are already in your existing SPSA plan. So you would click on the Modify button. Then select the applicable school strategy with actions to be modified and click on Start Editing. In our example here, we selected Academic Excellence ELA strategy with actions 2, and so it will display as you see here. The status column will show modified. The applicable, then you'll type the applicable school strategy in the modified school strategy text box. After that, type the applicable school actions in the modified school actions box. And once more, make sure you don't have any blank fields to avoid an error message when you try to save or submit the modification. After completing those sections, make sure you save, and then you'll click on the Add, Remove District Priority and Strategies button to align those to those modified school strategies and actions that you had just completed. Select the district priorities that will align with your modified school strategy and actions, and click on the Apply button. Now, in this example, we deselected the existing priority 1C that was in our original SPSA and selected new priorities 1B and 1D. But we also reselected 1A again, and all of the selections we make will always have that check mark next to them and will display in the modified district priority section. Then from the district strategies pop-up, select all the applicable district strategies and then click on Start Editing. And in our example here, we are selecting 1AS1, 1BS2, and although you don't see it on the screen, also 1DS2 to align with the priorities that we selected. The modified district priorities and strategies are going to appear beneath the original priorities and strategies. And once again, the way you can tell them apart is by the word modified. And you've heard it several times today, save frequently after each step. Lastly, I'm going to review how to delete a strategy entry. So let's say you selected a modified district priority or a new one and a set of strategies and actions, and then you decide later as you're working on the modification that you no longer need it and you want to delete that entry. You can click on the trash can and verify that you want to delete it. But once more, if it's a modified school strategy with actions, it doesn't permanently delete it. It will still be in your original SPSA. It can be reselected again for modification. However, if it's a brand new entry and you decide to delete it, then it will be deleted permanently. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Claire for the second half of this presentation to go over how to enter your budget information for modifications that involve a budget change.
Thank you, Mohammed. We'll discuss adding new positions. To add a new position, click your Add New Position button. Select the pillar page and the school strategy with actions, and then click the Save button. And then select the position. Now your blue text boxes can be modified. So the start date and the end date will default to the current school year. So you need to enter the start date and end date if it's different from your default dates. If you know the position number, type it over the existing NS temporary position number. Now, when you click the Save Modification as Draft button, your total cost will update, and that's the syncing mechanism with the SFE. So when you click that Save Modification as Draft, that's when it syncs with the SFE, and that $4,184 you see there is actually coming from the SFE. And now we'll show you how to modify positions. So you click the Modify Positions button. Now, the default is View All Pillar Pages, but you can filter for specific pillar pages for the school strategy and actions desired. So select the check boxes with your desired budget items that you want to modify, and then click the Start Editing button, which is located at the bottom of the page. Your position status selections are Active, Closed, and Suspend. And now we're going to show you how to suspend a position to get the salary savings. And I do want to iterate here that these are not real life examples. These are just designed to show you how to do it. Your fiscal specialist will assist you in getting the correct dates for suspending. So first, you're going to click on the Modify Positions button. And in this example, ABC School wants to suspend the current existing position number 304-87025, which belongs to an Intervention Prevention Support Coordinator for 6 hours and 5 days, beginning July 1, 23 to June 30, 2024, to capture the salary savings. So the school selects the position, and then they click the Start Editing button. Now you'll see that there are lines that are yellowed in when you try to select your choices here. And that's because those are already tied up in another modification that you have submitted. So if you see a yellow line here, you won't be able to select that item. All right, we're going to note that the current position is showing our Pillar Pages English language or English learner programs, and our start date is 7/1/23 and the end date is 6/30/2024. So the school wants to suspend this position from January 1, 24 to June 30, 2024. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the right side of our screen here to this green clone button, and we're just going to tap it once. And you'll see this bright yellow rectangle showing an exact duplicate of the position beneath it. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select Suspend. And in our start date, we're going to make that 1/1/2024. And then we're going to leave the end date as June 30, 2024. And now to see the salary savings, we click the Save Modification as a Draft button, and then the salary savings appears as a negative amount, in this case, $64,542. And note also that that bright yellow box is now white. So once you click the Save Modification as Draft, the yellow becomes white, and then you see the salary savings. Now, if there's any errors, then you won't see the negative salary savings. You have to correct the errors first. And here we show you the completed entries. Your salary savings from suspending that position is the $64,542. Now, SFE errors will display at the bottom of your screen in red, like they're shown here. The SEQNO is a sequence number, and it identifies the budget item that contains the error. So in this example, sequence number 99002 has the error. But now, even though there is an error, the modification has still been saved. And then the reason that this error was triggered is because the school has selected the wrong SACS function number. And in cases like this, the school would need to contact its principal, the SAA, or the fiscal specialist to obtain the correct SACS function number, and then correct the error before the school can submit the final modification to the regional approvers. So again, if there are any errors, the salary savings won't be displayed, and your school may need to contact your fiscal specialist for assistance with correcting an SFE error. And now in our modification budget summary page, we see this salary savings from the suspended position, the 64,542, and it appears on our 40261 pending distribution line in the fund that it was selected. In this case, it was Program Fund 7S046. Now the school will need to reallocate these savings and purchase something else to reduce that pending distribution. And we want schools to do this by year end. And now let's look at how to suspend an assistant teacher position where person A fills it from October 1st of 23 through December 31st of 23. And then person B fills it from May 1st of 24 to June 30 of 24. And again, these are fictitious examples, but we're just again showing you how to do this. So the first thing the school will do is you're going to click on the green clone icon and create an exact duplicate of this existing position. Now you can tell which line item needs to be duplicated by that seq node, the sequence number. A sequence number that starts with 0 means that it came from the SFE, the School Front End Tool web service. Okay, and that's the one that we'll be duplicating. Sometimes you'll have several positions in a row and you'll need to know which one am I going to duplicate. If it starts with a 0, yes. If it starts with a 9, no. All right, so once we've duplicated using the clone button, we see this bright yellow screen again. And in our new yellow text box, we're going to change that position status to suspend. And then we're going to leave our start date as 7/1/23 and change the end date to 9/30/2023 because person A won't be filling that position until October 1st. And so we're going to click Save as Modification Draft button. Position A will become active on 10/1. So we're suspending it through 9/30. Your sequence number starts with a 9, so you know that it was created in the SPSA. Again, it's not the item to duplicate, even though it has a green clone button. So remember, when you're going to be duplicating to suspend, you want to pick the one with the sequence number starting with a 0. And then click on your green clone button again, because we're going to create another line. And again, we have that yellow screen. We're going to select our status as suspend. And this time we're going to change our start date to 1/1/2024 and the end date to 4/30/24, since person B isn't starting until May 1st of 24. And now to see our salary savings, again, we're going to click the Save Modification as Draft button, and our salary savings appears as negatives. The first one for person A, the 15,441, and the second one for person B, 17,445. And this, once you save it as a draft, that's when it turns to white. Now, for the teacher assistant positions, you'll need to ask your fiscal specialist to supply the TA adjustment. And again, if there are any errors, the salary savings will not display until all the errors are corrected. And now we'll cover how to close a position. So to close the position for the entire 23-24 school year, we're going to select the status of closed. And then we're going to enter our start date as 7/1 and our end date is the same thing, 7/1/23. And now when you go to your modification budget summary page, you'll see that same salary savings as a sum of person A and B, 35,875. And it will show on your 40261 pending distribution line. The school, again, you need to reallocate those savings to reduce your pending distribution. Now, to close a position for a partial year, we enter the position status as closed. And again, we're going to enter our start date as 7/1 and the end date 12/31/2023. And again, you're going to verify your close dates with your fiscal specialist and ask them for the TA adjustment if it's applicable. Now you can add a new position for the remainder of the year using the same position number if it's desired. And now we're going to cover how to delete a budget item. If the school accidentally selects the wrong budget item for modification, it could be deleted by clicking your trash can located in your far right column. It can also be reselected from the Modify Non-Position button. Schools can change the non-position item SACS function, start date, end date, and the funding percent. Schools can change the position's item's position number, the position status, the start date, the end date, and the funding percent. And now we're going to modify a position start date or an end date. Schools can change the position start date and or position end date by using their calendar icon, or you can type in the new date in your start date, end date column. And in this example, ABC Schools Intervention Prevention Support Coordinator has a late start date of October 2nd, 23, and is funded in program S046. And there is a salary savings in the amount of $32,625. Now, the total cost in this example is updated because, again, the school saved the modification as a draft, and that was when it became synced with the SFE. So as soon as you click that button, your total cost updates unless there's an error. Now, whenever a position is funded with less than 100% categorical program funding, a blue informational message will appear after the school clicks the Save Modification as Draft button, or if the school clicks the Submit Final Modification button. This message will notify you that the position may be funded less than 100%. So, for example, if ABC School wants to buy a teacher assistant position using 50% of Title I 7S046 and 50% of a general fund, you would see this blue informational message when you click your Save Modification as Draft or Submit Final Modification. The message is just a reminder that that position may be less than 100% funded and that the school should check. But if, on the other hand, ABC School wants to fund an MS College and Career Coach using 50% of Title I and 50% of 7T124, then a blue informational message would not appear because the school has chose two categorical programs that add up to 100% funding, and they already appear in the school's SPSA. So again, your blue text is informational and it does not prevent your school from submitting its modification for final approval. Now we're going to cover how to modify a position. So to modify the position hours and days, simply reselect the same budget item with the correct hours and days from your budget item dropdown. When you save it as a draft, the total cost will update. To add a new non-position, we're going to click the Add New button and then select the pillar page and the school strategy with the actions and click your Save button. And then select the budget item and save your modification as a draft. Enter the hours, the days, the months, trips, years, or semesters. These are all different rates that your non-position items come in. And again, your total costs will update. You're going to save it as a draft, and that's what triggers the update. Now to modify a non-position, click the Modify Non-Positions button. Now we're going to select a filter if we don't want the default view all. Otherwise, we're just going to select the checkbox for each budget item that we want to modify, and then click the Start Editing button. Now the data in your blue text boxes can be changed. So your sequence number starting with a 0 means it came from the SFV and it cannot be deleted. However, you can change the value in the blue hours or semester text boxes to 0. And basically you're doing the same thing. You're deleting the cost, right? You're moving it to 0. And now we're going to handle cost changes that are made in coffee and how to cancel a modification. So if cost changes occur in the central office front end, the coffee, you'll see a red text message in your upper left corner of the page. And if your current modification status is pending review, then your regional approver's e-signatures will be deleted and the modification will revert to a draft status. Now, the school should check whether there are impacts to the cost of any budget items. Now, a school can cancel a modification with a status of pending review. Your status changes to draft and all of the regional reviewers' e-signatures are erased. A modification with a status of draft can be revised and resubmitted, and the status changes to pending review. But once all of the regional reviewers have approved a modification and the modification has been submitted to the fiscal specialist, the status changes to submitted and the school cannot cancel the modification. But the school can still request the fiscal specialist to reject it and the status will change to draft. Once the fiscal specialist posts your modification in the SFE, then the status changes to approved. And then we'll cover how to the modification submission to approvers. So only your principal or assistant principal can enter the SSC approval date, and only the principal or assistant principal can check your checkbox beside your ed code 64001, and they're the only ones who can click the checkbox beside the e-signature. Designees are not going to be able to do any of those things that are shown in this slide. If there are any budget changes, then the school has to click on the Request Fiscal Specialist Review button before it can submit the modification to the regional reviewers. And then if there are no budget changes, then that button will never appear. So in other words, if this is a no budget change, you won't see that Request Fiscal Specialist Review button shown here. But if you have even one budget change, yes, you'll see it there. And I want to note here that your fiscal specialist does not interface with the SPSA application. They will get back to you either through email or by phone call. So once you submit to them for their review, you may want to give them a day or so to get back to you. And if not, then contact them again. What we have is we have a counter on this Request Fiscal Specialist Review. So in other words, let's say you forgot that you clicked it and you go to click it again and it'll say, do you really want to send another email to your fiscal specialist? So it actually knows if you sent it and when you sent it. Okay, now after your modification, okay, so the regional, sorry, after your modification's been completed, then only the principal or assistant principal can click the Submit Final Modification button to submit it to the regional approvers. And that's because your principal or AP are the only people who would take responsibility for this modification. And so that's why we have limited that button to only them. Your regional approvers will receive an email notification that the modification is ready for their review. And if you're not ready to submit it yet, you can click the Save Modification as Draft and work on it at a later time. Now, the regional director and the regional reviewers are the approvers. Email notification is sent to the principal and the designees whenever a modification has been approved or a revision has been requested. And then this is a screenshot of the SFE modification requests with a budget change. So the system automatically displays all of the regional reviewers on their end. After the last regional reviewer approves, an email notification is sent to the fiscal specialist and the principal. And then the fiscal specialist still goes into the SFE and approves the compliance coordinator regional approval to post. Now your modification requests with a budget change. Once a modification is posted in SFE by your fiscal specialist, the status on the SPSA side changes from submitted to approved. The approval date will display underneath the name of each approval at the top of your SPSA modification dashboard page. And an email notification is sent from SFE to the principal only. A document number will display for the approved program, and SFE will email the school budget signature form to the principal. So a quick way for you to tell if your modification has been posted in the SFE is to scroll down to the bottom of the page where you see this SPSA modification approval section, and there you'll see a document number and the program fund that's been posted. A fiscal specialist can also reject a program's budget. In this example, the school should contact the fiscal specialist and make the required changes to the rejected budget item, in this case for 7S046, and then resubmit the modification for approval. The school cannot create another modification for the same program fund until the current modification's rejected program modification has been corrected and approved by the regional reviewers and posted by the fiscal specialist, or your fiscal specialist has rejected it at this point because the school can no longer just cancel this modification. Recall that the status has to be pending review for you to cancel it. Once it's submitted and it's gone to your fiscal, the only one that can delete it now is the fiscal specialist. Now we show you each stage of the approval process. So if there are no budget changes, then your status will not display submitted, but it will display draft, pending review, or approved, whichever is applicable. So in number 1, we show you when the modification is still in progress and you haven't submitted it for your regional approvals, the status will display as a draft. And number 2, when your modification has been sent to the regional approvers, your status will display as pending review. Number 3, when the modification has been submitted to the fiscal specialist, the status displays as submitted. And finally, number 4, when your modification has been approved and posted, the status displays as approved, along with the dates of the final regional approver that approved it. Now, the school's plan modification dashboard displays each regional reviewer's name and date of approval. It's important to note that it's a smart system, so it knows if you did a 7E046, then you're going to see that particular regional reviewer. So the approvals appear on the screen with a green background when they've been approved. Otherwise, the background will be red, meaning they're requiring a revision. And the program fund determines your regional reviewer. So again, it's a smart system. It knows who needs to review your modification. So in this example, a Title I program fund budget item was changed. And so the only regional reviewer that was required to approve was your Title I reviewer. When all of the required regional reviewers have approved an SPSA modification, the column titled Status Submitted On displays approved, along with the date of approval. The fiscal specialist posting date will not be displayed because we don't capture that from the SFE. And now I'll cover the appendix. So I'm going to start with the approval process flows, and then the modification resources, how to upload a document. For example, let's say you're buying equipment and you need to upload a quote in your modification. Also the modification history, and then how to print and save your modification as a PDF. So the approval process flows starts, of course, with inputting into the SPSA. You're going to either add new or modify your measurable objectives, or you're going to leave them alone. And you're going to add a district strategy and priority. And then we're going to enter the SSC approval date. Then check the Ed certification checkbox. And we have a decision here. Was there a budget change? If there is, yes, then we move to the right. We're going to request the fiscal specialist review. Then we're going to click our request button there. Then check the e-signature box for the principal, and then submit the final modification to the regional reviewers. And we have another decision. Did the regional reviewers approve it? If yes, we continue down, submit it to the fiscal specialist for posting in the SFE, and finally a decision, did the fiscal specialist post in SFE? Now, if we take the budget change and we say no, then continuing down, we're still going to check the e-signature box for principal. We're still going to submit the final modification to the regional reviewers, and then we still have the decision, did the regional reviewers approve? If yes, the process ends there. If not, we return to the top and repeat these steps. Now, the SPSA modification resources link includes any job aids and FAQs. So the link is located at the top right section of your modification details page, and it appears when your school creates a new modification or if it opens an existing one. You can also go to this PDF of your PowerPoint that we dropped in the chat box, and then continue down to this slide where you can click on that orange SPSA modification resources, and that will also take you to the link. So the SPSA modification details page includes a document upload feature that's located just above your date approved by your SSE and the certification section. So you're going to click the choose file button first, and then you're just going to select the file that you want to upload. And the acceptable file types are listed here. They're PDF, doc, docx, XLS, XLSX, and TXT. And then you're going to click the open button, and then click the upload button to see your file listed in the file column. Now, if you selected the wrong file, simply click your trash can located off to the right here to delete it. And also we have this little feature called edit file name. So let's say that it's got kind of a strange name and you want it to just be more straightforward. You can click on this and then pick a more appropriate name, and it will change the name of your saved file. Now, to view your modification history, you click the List All Modifications button. And this is going to show you all of the modifications that you created in the current year. And it's going to show you the status. So if anybody was requiring a revision here, it would be a red background. To print or save your modification, you click the SPSA Modifications button that's located in your left navigation menu. And then you're going to click the green button located in the far right, and it looks like a printer here. So you simply select the one that you want to print. And then your modification PDF is ready to print or save. And I do want to note here that we are still working on the printable modification. We had many changes this year, and we anticipate that it should be ready mid to late October. So if you're going to print, then you would click the printer icon, and it's in your top right section. Then click the arrow icon to download it, and then save it to a specified network drive.
Okay, thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the end of our main presentation. In a minute, we're going to open it up for questions. But before doing that, we do kindly ask that before you leave today's meeting, that you just take 2 or 3 minutes to complete a very brief evaluation. It is really important to us to get your feedback. We use your feedback to improve the training sessions and supports that we provide to all of you each year as part of this pilot program. And just to illustrate that point, one of the main pieces of feedback we've gotten in prior years is that the information we share at these trainings is helpful, as well as the presentation, but it would be very helpful for schools and even reviewers to engage in hands-on application. And we have taken that feedback and have worked on developing an SPSA sandbox that allows you to create practice modifications. And we are hoping to schedule with our pilot schools in the month of October some practice sessions where you can do hands-on application in that SPSA sandbox. So more information to come on that. We're in the process right now of finalizing details on that. But I mentioned that to just let you know that your feedback is really helpful to us in improving the supports that we provide to you. So please do take a minute to complete that before you leave today. The link will be dropped into the chat. And again, it is on this slide as well. And at this time, before we wrap up, I just want to stress one final thing to all of you. Whether you are a regional reviewer or a school designee, I started this meeting by saying that we don't expect you to walk away as an expert on the information we share today. Today is really just meant to be an overview of the process. Just know again that you will have dedicated support from our team. If you need support with, as a school designee, creating a modification, you can contact me. My information is on this slide, and we'll be happy to schedule a one-on-one Zoom meeting with your school to walk you through the process. Likewise, for our regional reviewers, if you need support with the review and approval process, we are more than happy to meet with you and support you with that process as well. Before stopping our recording and opening it up for questions, I just want to thank all of our participants today and want to let you know that we really look forward to supporting all of you with the SPSA pilot program this year. Okay. So Hector, if we can go ahead and stop the recording, and then we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions.